To the mind, it doesn't make sense because the mind is conditioned to think somebody's got to be aware. There's always an entity that's conscious. That's the conditioning of the mind. But direct observation shows that that's a fallacy. That the consciousness is there, but that which is conscious is not a me. And so stopping there, because see, one has to have a capacity to be quiet, to be still, so you can stop right there, right at the edge, because you're right at the edge of the infinite. You're literally right at the edge of the realization. The understanding takes you to the edge of mind, to the boundary, the frontier of mind. And to sort of start pushing beyond the boundary of mind. I don't actually mean pushing as in striving, but to start to move beyond the boundary of mind, there has to be the willingness to experience what is understood, what is seen. What is it like to not find a separate somebody there? What's the experience of it? And that question is not meant to bring you into the mind again, but to actually reground you in being, in experience. So you're literally feeling, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to sit in a room like this, right here, right now? For those of you who have the understanding, with a certain understanding, that what's looking out through your eyes, what's listening through your ears, what's sensing through your senses isn't a someone or a something. What's the experience of it? What's it like? And this starts to be the link between understanding and realization. Again, never misunderstand. Realization will only and can only come spontaneously. You can't fake it. That's the nice thing about it. Well, you can fake it, but you can't. But you can only convince yourself. You can't fake the truth to the truth. And this goes true for any and all spiritual inquiry. Meditative inquiry is that it has to be grounded in number one, experience, and a certain stillness of mind. I don't mean that your thought processes have to come to a complete stop. I mean that your attention has to be more on experience than it is on thinking. Because even in this very simple inquiry, very simple question, which is the pivotal question, which is why I always return to it constantly, 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 everything hinges on this self that most human beings take themselves to be. The formula is very simple. No self, no problem. The realization that there is no separate self brings the realization that there is no problem. Because all problems happen and are literally created by the me. The me's relationship with experience. Because the me is always going into relationship with every experience, is it not? What do I think about it? What do I feel about it? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Is it threatening for me? Will it get me what I want? Will it not get me what I want? Does it correspond with all my thoughts? Does it not correspond with my thoughts? Does it correspond with my beliefs? Not. So the me is it's actually not living at all. It's living in this imagined relationship with life. That's why the me feels lonely, isolated. It always wants to reach out and touch, right? It's not the only impulse towards intimacy, but from an egoic standpoint, it's one of the biggest impulses towards intimacy is because, to me, having no real existence in and of itself, living in its interpretation of life, of every moment. What's in it for me? How is it for me? Is it true for me? Not for me? That's where it's living in this imagined life, very, very isolated. And so it's always seeking to reach outside of that, is it not? And contact. It's almost like saying, somebody, touch me. That's what the me is always saying. In some way. Have some actual relationship. So it's always reaching out for some sort of contact, some sort of intimate connection. What it's really reaching out for is a little connection with reality. Right? With life, with something that has real energy instead of this imagined energy. Right? Because we can get an imagined energy when we believe we're right. There's a great energy in I am right. There's a great there's a confidence in it, right? A self-righteous energy, and there's a certain type of energy in that. And then, of course, if we gather together in that energy field, then we are right. Then there's a intimacy and energy in that. But inherently in that sort of energy field, whether it's personal or collective, it's ultimately isolating, right? Because you've ever noticed when we think we're right as an individual or as a community of individuals, it's never enough for us to think we're right, is it? It's never enough for a group of people who are convinced they're right just to sit, live their lives in peace, leave everything else around in the total bliss of their rightness, right? Everybody's wrong, we're right, and we'll be happy with that. It doesn't happen, does it? Whether it's the person or the collective, it's still reaching out for contact, right? Usually in a destructive way, right? Convincing everybody, convincing. Believe me, believe me, believe me. But when you trace it back, it is a way that this energy is reaching out for some contact. It's a destructive way that it reaches out. It will destroy things in its path through its reaching out. But ultimately, it's reaching out again for something real. It just thinks that its idea is real.